All right, welcome back to the Tool World Podcast. I'm your host, David Ju, and I'm here with Master Ju.
Hello, Mr. Ju.
Hello. This week, we're going to be talking a little bit about punching and what kind of defines punching, right? And so we're going to look at two techniques in particular, or three, or four.
Or five.
They're kind of all similar in sense, right? One being the horizontal punch, or like your double downward punch. Is that right? Double downward punch? And then the high side piercing kick with the punch, right? And how do we load up this technique exactly? So let's start with the horizontal punch. So you're utilizing both hands, and there's two different versions that you might have. So like in our group, we tend to pull the shoulder back, and so the body would kind of like full face towards the opponent, and then it'll twist. So that way that both hands can come to the armpit, and then they can twist out and they go straight in, right?
Oh, that's the Master Ju students do it that way.
And then you have the other way, where like in Poland, the hands come up and the hands like in front, and then they come to the side. So now one hand looks like it's coming, the back hand's coming in like a punch, right?
Like a
and then the other hand
punch.
is like coming kind of like, it's straight, but then at the same time it's also kind of like almost like a side fist in some kind of ways, right?
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on the
Punches.
hand that's not going straight?
Right. Here's a analysis. If I have a hammer and nail, Grandmaster Wheatley always used this one because he was a general contractor. If I have a hammer and nail and I put my nail up, and let's say my hammer is at a slight angle down or a slight angle up, and you hit the nail, what happens to the nail? Well, you never hammer a nail, do you?
It bends.
It bends, exactly. So the only way that it works is that the hammer has to line up with the nail. So good people that know how to hammer nicely, they can line it up and they hit the nail head and it goes straight in. Any slight angle changes that trajectory, all right? And so if we take a look at just fundamental concept, if my hand is down by the belt and we step forward and punch, and I shoot my hand from the belt, not to say that it cannot hit the nail at that moment of impact and go straight in, but there's always a slight chance as I'm stepping forward and my hand's on my belt and I bring it up and it's kind of coming in an upward motion, and then I hit, what happens is that you might be bending that nail, like if we use that hammer nail concept. Or better yet, you know how you can tell when someone is not hitting it straight on is a lot of times when they hit the board. Board's a good example.
Yeah.
And it kind of like cuts the fist.
Yeah.
Like it shaved it off because there's a friction of the fist going slightly up or down. Whereas if you punch it straight in, you don't have that kind of friction to skin off the skin, right? And so if we think of it that way, punches have to be straight on. That makes a lot of sense to me, all right? And so how do I reduce that? How do I reduce any delivery of it being up or down, right? So I kind of think that really punches are more at the solar plexus or in the armpit and it goes straight out. That's for a middle punch, right? When we look at that horizontal punch, same thing. If I want to make it go straight, I've got to load it into my armpit and go out. That's the way I do it. As opposed to kind of up and then as I punch on the horizontal punch or the angle punch is okay, it's because of the way it's kind of already positioned. The other one kind of is almost like a side, I've seen it where it almost looks like a side fist strike, right? And so there's that slight variation there, right there, even though you might be able to get it to be straight, but there's always a better chance that it's going to be more of a side strike than it is a four-fist punch.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense?
Well, I think that it looks like a side strike, but then if it hits in the front, it's still like a punch.
Sure, it is.
And so, I think you could hit like a bag or a wall, and then even though it's here, you can still have it go straight. It doesn't have to pull it back.
No, I'm not going to disagree with that at all.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that if you want to make sure that it's not a side punch, then you've got to load it up a certain way so that it is delivered. So does it make it look different? And so that's a really good question about like how we execute these techniques. Like for instance, Wan Yo, where you do this inward knife hand strike, and then you do this 4-fist punch in the fixed stance, right? So I do this inward knife hand strike, and how do you load it up? I can load it up maybe out in front here, and then shoot it out.
Yeah.
Is that a side fist strike or is it not? And then are you engaging your hip? Because I'm always thinking about how do I engage my whole body? I need to engage my hip as well. And so I teach it. You do the inward knife hand strike. And then I load it up like I'm going to go step forward into a walking stance. And then but as I wind up my hip and I wind up my arm, and then I execute the technique, but I change it into a fixed stance. Now I'm engaging my hip, and it's no longer just an L stance going into the fixed stance. I want to engage that, but the only way to engage that is to actually change the body position, right? So I want to load up the punch. The further you can pull that hand back, the more acceleration you can get. That means more acceleration gives you more power, right? And then I'm going to hit it straight on. And I got to load up my hip. I've got to utilize the hip in the technique. And so when you look at some students that do Wanyo, specifically low ranks, they don't do that. They don't engage their hip. They do the side punch because they don't load it up. They don't load up the punch. So that's kind of the reason why I teach it that way. Whether people go, oh, yes, or that's Master Ju student. That's why it looks that way. It's because that's the way I teach it.
I think a lot of people do it either one or two ways.
Oh,
that's
one of the way?
Yeah, I don't think it's just us.
Oh, okay.
I think that's more like, maybe more our group that we're in.
Oh.
Does it more like that?
Yeah, for sure. Because when you have like a Grandmaster Wheatley leading a seminar and he's kind of talking some about this ideas, or maybe I'm doing something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to go, yeah, I buy that, or what the heck?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I would say, though, about that is that as you load it up, it does kind of put your body in a vulnerable spot. When you look at, like, most techniques, they start within the body range, right? And that's also to kind of keep the hands close to be able to defend yourself.
Yeah,
so, when you, like, load it up, now, look, if I pull both hands back, I'm exposed almost.
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying. When you're dealing with someone that you're trying to explain something, like sine wave, I've always talked about this in the past. I think sine wave, sometimes people do it too excessively, but the only way to let other people understand this concept of sine wave is that you might actually have to exaggerate, right? And so sine wave is only like 30 degrees. The bend is only like 30 degrees. It's not a lot. It's very subtle.
Right.
But for the person that doesn't understand that and they look at someone, they go, well, there's no sine wave.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. You just don't see it because you're not trained to see that. And so, like new people, you kind of have to exaggerate stuff like that. And hopefully, as time goes on and they start to understand what we're trying to do, that it kind of evens out a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been telling you this, but you do it. It's just that it's not like exaggerated. It's not like that super big windup.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just saying.
Well, no, I teach it that way too, but I try to play some devil's advocate here. I'm trying to make it a little bit more interesting.
No, I see.
I'm not like, I
thought we were just disagreeing here.
Well, normally you ask me, do you have any other opinions? And I'm giving you my opinion now.
All right.
But I'm not saying that I agree with this one.
Now we're in an argument here.
Well, you might feel like that. I was trying to play the other side.
Right. So anyway, just a general idea about where do you position your hand? And so that also kind of, I don't know, does that answer kind of that horizontal punch?
Okay.
We definitely don't need it to look like a side punch on that.
Yeah. Somewhere maybe in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. You've got to load it up so that it comes out, right?
Yeah.
I always kind of think of punches are really delivered from the shoulder line, right around here, because in real life, your hands tend to be here. Right. They tend to be around the solar plex line. And we don't, in real life, you don't actually punch and hold it out there. So it goes in and out. And so, even if I was doing an angle punch, it wouldn't be, it's actually in the hands for me, I kind of think it's right in the shoulder line. And then when you execute it, you got to wind it up
Right.
to execute the technique. It's got to, and where does that wind up go? How much do you want to wind it up?
Yeah.
Those are good questions, I think. In real life, I don't think the wind up is as big as that.
Yeah.
Because it's very fast.
Right.
But in patterns, I got to see that it looks like a punch, not a side fist strike.
Yeah. Well, that was like 14 minutes. So next week we're gonna debate about the punching for the side piercing kick.
I don't want to go on than that. Yeah.
We're gonna keep going, but that's gonna be next week.
That's next week. All right.
Okay? So
sounds good.
thanks for jumping into another Two World podcast. As always, don't forget to be safe.
Keep training.
We'll see you guys next time.
Take one.